I'm glad to get you on this podcast and to talk about something we've never covered on Sporting Dog Talk so far.
Yeah, turkey dogs. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things. I always said I made a living as a bow hunting writer, and obviously I love bow hunting, but turkey dogs was kind of more of a hobby and a passion, and I swore I would never try to make money at it, to just kind of keep it pure, right? And you understand that being a writer who focuses on bow hunting a lot, or dogs at this point. So yeah, it is definitely one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, you did the same thing I did where you made bow hunting. Bow hunting became your job, and so you had to find an escape. And for me, that's just become any kind of upland or waterfowl hunting. But you took a different path into the turkey dog thing, and I really think a lot of people aren't even familiar with the possibility that this is legal. You know, I know you said the other day on our phone call that a lot of people don't even believe this is legal, but it is in a lot of states, and it's something that there's a pretty deep, history with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you go back to like where it began, there's articles in Outdoor Life from 100 years ago talking about turkey dogs, and it really was a gentleman's sport. As far as anyone can tell, it started in Virginia. A lot of dog sports, that's where dogs are chased with, dogs chase deer and all those things there. And only people who had a lot of money back in the beginning, from my understanding, had turkey dogs. Like it was kind of an exclusive thing. You were somebody if you had a turkey dog and chased turkeys in the fall with a dog. Even today, you fast forward, there's very few people that do it. Some people think it's unfair, or wrong. I asked the editor at the NWTF one time, like, man, why don't we do more turkey dog stuff? And he actually said to me, well, to be honest with you, Tracy, we get hate mail, when we publish an article on hunting turkeys with dogs. So they will do, one article here and one article there, probably, once a year, just to hats off to the turkey dog guys, but that's where it stops.
So let think about that for a second. I can go put up cellular trail cameras to scout turkeys. I can put up a camouflage blind, a five hub blind. I can sit in there. I can be as comfortable as I want to be and have the most realistic decoys out there as possible. And that's totally acceptable and fair. But if you go out and bust up a flock in the fall with well-trained dogs, people go nuts over that.
Yeah, and what a lot of people don't understand too, they think of it, I think a lot of people think it's unfair because, your success rates can be really high because you're using a dog. Well, the dog's job is to go find a flock of turkeys, break them up, and then it's all on you to call those birds back in. And as far as the turkey knows, he just had a coyote run up his butt, right? They're not rushing back to the call, especially a gobbler. The guy I bought my first turkey dog from was out of Virginia, and he told me his favorite thing to do is break up fall gobbler flocks. And it was sometimes 4 to 6 hours before he would hear a gobbler yelp after the break. Well, that takes patience.
Yep. Well,
it's not easy.
And you've got the dog there with you.
Yeah. Now, some people bring their dogs back to the truck. I don't do that. My dogs are bag trained, is what we call it, where my dog will climb inside a bag, and they know that when you get the bag out of your backpack, it's go time. They know what that means, and they climb inside the bag, and I've had them sit there still for 3 or 4 hours at a time, until the gun goes off.
When you say bag train, that's like for people who aren't familiar, it's kind of like if you think about duck hunting in the waterfowl world, the field blinds for your dog, so you might be in a lay down blind or a layout blind, and your dog's next to you in a blind of appropriate size for him. So it's not like they're hopping into a garbage bag or anything like that.
No.
But that's what's interesting about this is, a lot of people are going to say, well, I don't care about turkey dogs, or, that's not my thing. I like pheasants. I like ducks. But just right there, the training I want to get into, but the steadiness for saying, okay, now you've put turkeys on red alert, and I've hunted fall turkeys a lot, and I know what it's like to bust flocks of, hens and poults versus gobblers, and when they're coming back in, what they're looking for. So now you've got this dog that's hiding with you and has to have steadiness down to a T.
And that dog, when those birds come back and they're talking, you're interacting with them, that dog can hear that bird, 40, 50, 60 yards away. and it has to sit there still till the gun goes off, and I've had varying degrees of success. I have one dog right now. He's half Plott hound, half setter. He has a real hard time with it. I've tied him to my leg on a leash because he's fine until he hears their feet in the leaves or they give a little cluck here or there, and he's got so much prey drive he just can't stand it, and he'll jump out of the bag. Where I have other ones that'll just sit there for 5 hours in a downpour, and they know they sit there silent until the gun goes bang.
Is that dog that you're talking about there that's having a hard time with the steadiness? Is he young?
Let's see. He is 3.5 now. He's gotten a little bit better, but he's just a wild and crazy dog. Tons of prey drive. That's the upside to him. The downside is he just, he's always struggled with it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can do it in the living room. When I trained him as a pup in the living room, my kids would take a blanket, put it over him, and then they would just act like wild Indians, in the living room just to create stimulus. Let's see what he can put up with, and he'll do fine. But a turkey walking in the leaves sometimes is a no-go.
I think there's something there. My dog, I've talked about this on this podcast a lot. I have a lab, and she's a great dog, but she will break every rule I set for her to chase turkeys. And she just can't take it when we run across a flock of turkeys, and she will go bust. She probably would have been a hell of a bird or a hell of a turkey dog if we could do that here, which we can't. But there's just something in those big birds walking through that some dogs cannot take. They gotta go.
There's a lot of odor, right? I mean, there's a lot of odor. If you have a decent sized flock, 4 or 5, 10, 15 birds, whatever, there's a lot of odor. You think about your duck hunting or grouse hunting, you're a bird here, a bird there, and some dogs can hardly stand on point with one grouse in front of them. So you put 20 birds in front of them, and it's like cocaine. Yeah. It really, really is.
Well, how do you start that process when you get a pup and you're like, okay, I need this dog. There's steps to this fall turkey hunting. I need it to find the birds. I need it to blow them up. I need it to come back and be steady. How do you start the process?
Well, the bag training starts real young. As soon as I get them, I'm putting them under a blanket. I'm confining them to small spaces. My first one, I even fed her in a bag. Is actually a scent tote. Remember when ScentLock made scent totes? They were a duffel bag. I worked with Scent Tote and helped them develop products. So that I had this huge duffel bag. I would put dog food in there and zip her in there, and let her eat her dog food in there while she's zipped in the complete darkness. So over time, she just got used to being in that confined space, and eventually they just, hey, this is what Dad wants me to do. The first time you kill a bird over that dog, all the dots are connected. They're like, oh, this is what all this is about. And now we kind of call it nesting. My best dog, she's 8 years old now. When she breaks a flock, she comes back to me and starts just getting nervous. And the moment I sit down against a tree, she curls up right next to me. She knows exactly what the next step is.
Do you have to bag her?
I put a blanket over the top of her, just camouflage. Sometimes it's just depending on how early season or how much gear I want to have on my back. Sometimes it's just a lightweight coat.
Yep.
As long as her eyes are covered, I mean, I could put duct tape over her eyes and she'd probably lay there all day. If she can't, the moment she's in the darkness, she just knows I got to lay here.
Yep. So they're just sitting there listening, waiting for things to unfold.
Yeah. Now, the rest of it is in some ways similar to a duck dog or a grouse dog. We start with wings. You tease them with turkey wings. You hide them at greater and greater distances. You hide them in brush or hide them in tall grass, and they bring them back to you and you reward them. So in a lot of ways, it's similar to grouse. The breaking, they know what odor they're looking for. And hopefully on your first good flock or whatever, the flock is there. You're kind of cheating a little bit and you introduce them to a flock. And the flock is there and they run in, and of course they want to chase. Now, a really experienced turkey dog over time learns that it's not about just breaking the initial flock. They will break the initial flock and then go try to find runners. And the further spread apart you can get that flock, the better chance you have of killing a bird, because they got to talk to find each other.
Yep.
And a good turkey dog is going to spread them out all over the place. Just in a million miles. Some are going to fly in trees. Some are going to run. Gobblers like to run. They hate to fly.
Yep.
It's interesting. I mean, I have buddies who their dogs have actually, caught a gobbler on the run because that gobbler just refuses to leave the ground.
Yep.
But an
Yep.
experienced dog is pushing them all over the woods. So then they have to talk to find one another. And that's where your calling comes in.
I was wondering about that because when people talk about breaking up a flock, typically you talk about just running in there yourself. And if you do that enough, you see these patterns emerge like that with the difference between hens and poults versus gobblers and how long it takes them to get back together. Hens and poults, if you bust them up right, they start calling almost instantly.
10 minutes later.
Yeah.
10 minutes
and
later.
if you bust them wrong and you see the whole flock go in the same general direction, you might as well start over.
You're doomed. You're doomed.
But if you have one peel off the other way, you just set up and face that way. And that's the bird that's going to get real lonely real fast. And so I was curious about that. If there's anything you work with on the dogs to make sure that the flock gets really fractured up.
The dog, it's just killing lots of birds. On their own, they just learn that, hey, they're running all over the place. And sometimes a dog will be out there running for 10, 12 minutes after the initial break, just scattering other birds. A dog that's mediocre is the dog that runs into the flock. He makes an initial break. He comes back and he's done. It's harder to kill birds that way because the moment you have two birds back together, those two birds quit talking. So it's really tough. You need them scattered far and wide.
Yeah. When you're doing kind of the wing introduction and, you're doing the bag training, which is basically steadiness. And, It's a little bit different than crate training or something like that you might start a different bird dog puppy on, but it's awful close. And then you're working in, a pretty similar style with the wings and the scent. Are you doing anything like trailing drill wise? Are you dragging scent so they know like, okay, when I get on this, I got to run and find that flock?
Yeah. You're dragging wings and hiding wings at greater and greater distances. There is no turkey scent you can buy. You know what I mean? So There's nothing like that. I've used live turkeys, small poults that are half grown, and run them through the woods and hang them in a tree in a little cage or whatever, just to, for that dog to learn that there's a reward at the end of the trail.
Does it click pretty quickly with them?
Absolutely. The prey drive. And to get into the breed side of it, most people are buying turkey dogs from turkey dog breeders. There's not many of them, but these are guys that for generations and generations have been breeding dogs for this purpose. And I got to believe, that's part of it too, is the dogs really love turkeys.
What kind of dogs are they?
Most of them are a setter, pointer, cross. They're mutts, but they're mutts that have been bred, by a person for a certain trait for many years. So, for instance, a dog I just bought in February that was partially trained, she's 2 years old. She's bred out of Virginia, and that guy is 73 years old, and he's been breeding turkey dogs since he was like 22. And that's his thing. And a lot of these guys are so secretive that they don't even tell people they have puppies. It's kind of a thing where they only sell them to their friends. It's kind of a good old boys club, especially in Virginia. I would guess in the whole country, I don't know if there's 1,000 people with turkey dogs. I mean, for real, there might be. I might be way off, but like in the state of Michigan where I live, I don't know anyone that has a turkey dog.
You're the only guy?
I'm the only guy I know of.
Well, why are those old timers so secretive about it?
I don't know, because they want to have the best dogs. You know what I mean? And they don't want anybody else having a rock star dog, I think is what it boils down to.
So they're it's kind of like they're guarding their secret sauce.
Yeah. So a lot of them are English and then English pointer, English setter. Some like this, I'm probably going to get a puppy here in about a month. That one's got quite a bit of Irish setter in it. My first one, probably the most famous of turkey dog breeders, was John Byrne out of Virginia. NWTF wrote about him all the time. He's been in outdoor life. He passed away, but his dogs were English pointer, English setter, crossed with a little plot hound. That's what made me get my plot cross. A friend of mine who knew I had turkey dogs just called me one day and said, hey, a buddy of mine had a English setter. He runs bears with plot hounds and birds with English setters. Well, the two got together by accident and had a litter of puppies, and I decided I'd take on an experiment.
That's I mean, it makes sense. I'm trying to think when you're telling me, they're part pointer, part setter, and then you throw in some hound. I mean, it kind of makes sense because you're bird hunting kind of in the hound style.
Absolutely. I always, when I'm trying to explain this style of hunting to someone who's never heard of it, I tell them it's a lot like coon hunting. You dump a dog in the woods, they take off. When you hear them barking, if they've been trained properly, when you hear them barking, there's about a 90% chance they're barking at turkeys. And there's a lot of times if they're breaking turkeys 3, 4, 500 yards from you, you sit up against a tree, you don't have any sign in some cases. You're totally going off the fact that that dog was barking nonstop for 10 minutes. You never saw a turkey. You didn't hear any turkeys. You're blind calling. And you're always doubting yourself until you hear that first kiki off in the distance. You're like, okay, he did it right this time,
So you're not going. I envision this when you set that dog loose and it's out there coursing around. It gets on the turkey scent and blows that flock up, and you hear that. You're not going down there to where he blew up the flock.
Yes, sometimes it depends on the lay of the land, right? If you're in mountainous terrain, if I'm in Pennsylvania or whatever, you might work an edge. You might not be right where he was, and you might not have any sign. You might come into it and there's a whole bunch of scratching, right? Like, okay, yeah, there was a turkey flock here, but it just depends. Every scenario is different. I love it when you walk up and you see all this scratching. You're like, okay, there's no doubt this is where they just were, but it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah. Does this having a good dog, does it kind of alleviate the need to scout those spots out? Because the dog's going to go out and find them?
Well, the big thing is knowing where birds are. I mean, you don't know where they are at that very moment, but you want to know ahead of time. Man, we're seeing a flock in this section of woods, several days a week. We're going to hunt this fall, and you try to have as many spots as possible. Especially, I've had friends come from all over the country to hunt here with me. I had a wildlife biologist from Anchorage, Alaska, come here and hunt turkeys with his wife. Here, this guy kills nuisance brown bears for a living, and he really wanted to, hunt turkeys with dogs. It's proof that you want that thing that you can't have in your own backyard,
Yep.
And so I scouted a lot then, so I had as many flocks lined up as possible. But there's times, I'm in Pennsylvania, even up here in northern Michigan, I've walked into a section of woods completely blind. Didn't know if there was ever turkeys there at all, and lo and behold, you break a flock, and it's glory days.
Is it always one dog per hunt?
Oh no. There's times we'll have 2 or 3. I hunted in Kansas. Man, that's probably 8-10 years ago now. And Kansas, as you know, you've bow hunted all over places like Kansas, the Dakotas, Nebraska. They have 100, 200 bird flocks. You're not going to break that flock up with one dog. It's not going to happen. So if I'm hunting areas where I know there's lots of flocks, I'll have 2 dogs with me. But I feel like, talking about the dog side of things, and some people might disagree with this, I feel it's better to train a dog by itself. I hear a lot of people say, oh, I like to train them together. The old dog trains the new dog. I kind of feel like the young dog, and I've seen this over and over again, kind of gets lazy and lets the older dog kind of do its thing. And it just comes along for the ride. For it to really click, they need to spend a lot of time on their own with you hunting birds.
Yeah.